Cool. Thank you, Victor. Good to see you all today. I'm glad I could step in to save the day. I'm just going to be covering some of the theoretical side of MCP today, which is a technology that we're implementing for our clients readily at the moment. Then we're going to hand over to Craig, who's going to go through a live practical show and tell, bring the whole technology to life. Just to introduce myself, so as Victor said, I'm the Principal AI Consultant at PB Tech. I've only been with the business about 6 months. Prior to that, I've just been supporting global energy firm across APAC and Europe, and now looking to support New Zealand businesses with their AI transformation efforts. But today we're going to be talking about Model Context Protocol, which really is an exciting technology and a future that we're going towards at quite a rate of knots. Just a quick agenda, so I'm just going to cover the different types of agents to set the scene today, bit of an overview on MCP as a technology. Just look at the difference between connectors and MCP if you are exploring the technical side of it, and then we'll look at some real-world examples. So, out of interest, who in the room, whose company is kind of on M365 Copilot at the moment, or rolling it out in your organization? And who's building Copilot Studio agents or designing them? And is anyone using Foundry to do custom AI development? Couple, yeah. And what about MCP servers? Has anyone used or built MCP servers? Just the one, yeah. It's a relatively new technology, and hopefully today we can shed some light on the absolute power of it. Copilot, of course, M365 is a per user basis. It's licensed per user, unlocks the AI capability in your everyday office apps like Excel, Teams, Word, for example. We've got the custom agents Copilot Studio, so of course that's licensed on your tenant. And then your users and employees can consume those licenses. And anything that those can't do is when you would probably pivot to the specialized agents in Foundry to unlock the real capabilities. Obviously, the agents in their own right can, as by default, just look at knowledge sources, but often we want to unlock practical value of these agents. And that's how we can extend them, and that's what we're going to look at today. So extending those agents with various capabilities so that we can tap into your business systems. It might be your ticketing system, CRM, database of customer information, whatever it might be. That's how we need to really unlock the power of these agents. There's a few ways you can do that. We've got connectors. So if you're using Copilot Studio at the moment, they've got the pre-built connectors, things like ServiceNow, the Outlook connectors for M365 as well. So you can unlock the power of those. Direct APIs. So if you want to go really low level, you can. And then plugins as well. If you want to customize plugins to do specific functionality, you can also build those. Connectors, there's about 1,500. So for a lot of the mainstream commercial products, a lot of those come shipped, which means you can govern those technologies. And the one we're looking at today is MCP. So this is a standard protocol, which is really exciting. It basically opens up the world to AI to start taking some of those operations and actions for you. So Model Context Protocol, we've got the host. So that's your, if you look at it through the Copilot Studio perspective, that is your agent, the server, and then all of that is connected. So the server you can actually have within your Microsoft Azure tenant, or you can have it hosted elsewhere. It's entirely up to you. The key power is the notion that you can have basically again, through the notion of Copilot Studio, build an agent that might have 5 connectors to your systems. You might then have a second agent that also connects to 5 connectors. So then you've got 10. But with an MCP protocol or building an MCP server, you can essentially wrap around that and really minimize the workload. You let the AI actually delegate and interface to those systems. So in the context of Microsoft Copilot Studio, you build your agent. Now that gets wrapped in your MCP client, which basically unlocks the features and functionality. To hit the server, you need to create your MCP server. Now this actually gets shipped with Copilot Studio now, so you don't need to do any heavy lifting or custom code under the scene. So if you're exploring Copilot Studio agents, you can actually just get your MCP server provisioned by default, which is great. That's on Azure. If you don't want to, you can get one on your own VM and spun up locally as well. So it depends on your infrastructure and your architecture. So the real power is that the AI and MCP allows you to dynamically interface to those tools that sit on the MCP server. As you can see on the right-hand side there, you've got your services, your APIs, your databases, legacy systems. That MCP server can wrap around all of those tools and allow the AI to interface with them and perform actions, read and write. So in terms of connectors, so if you've used connectors, we probably want to just compare against the new MCP servers. So why would you use one over the other? So a connector could be something like a ServiceNow connector. So it's a pre-built one that's shipped with Microsoft. You can integrate it into your Copilot Studio agent, but it's very much orientated around very structured workflows. So it's got to be a sort of predefined logical step that the agent follows, rather than the dynamic ability of the MCP server. And that's what we're moving towards, and that's why these things are so powerful. So connectors, predefined behavior, MCP, real-time AI-driven decisions. The connectors are also a managed service, so they manage all of your security. So if you're connecting into M365, your ServiceNow, they're already pre-built for you. So that's one of the benefits. But with MCP, you get that flexible nature with all of your integrations wrapped around with your MCP server. That will all come to life when Craig takes us through the demonstration. We've got a little flowchart here. I'm not sure if you can see that too clearly, so I'll just whiz through these steps. But this is a decision tree really just to help you decide whether a MCP server should be used over a connector. The important thing is MCP servers aren't replacing connectors. You can actually use them in hybrid. So this just helps sort of identify what the right tool is. So is a connector available is probably the first question you would ask, like the ServiceNow one. If yes, then you could use the connector if it's a predefined workflow. If it's not, you could ask yourself, is this a repeatable workflow that I'm trying to build? If it is, and there's a connector, then definitely use one. If governance, audit, and compliance is your top priority, then that might be something that comes shipped with a connector too. But then you say, if that's not the case, maybe you want the AI to do AI-driven context-aware decisions, and this is where we're bringing the AI intelligence into the whole process. So if that is the case, and you want it to dynamically look at all of your systems or tools within your MCP server, then the MCP is definitely the right way to go. Again, if you want to orchestrate multiple systems, it's the right way to go. So can we share these afterwards maybe? But this is quite a nice little diagram just to support the decision-making process. Yeah, super. Just looking at some real-world scenarios before we get into the practical demo from Craig. So let's look at this through the lens of an Outlook MCP server. So an Outlook MCP server unlocks all of the capabilities, read and write operations, creating emails, deleting emails, reading your calendar, scheduling bookings, for example, for meetings. And the beautiful thing about the MCP server is that it can basically interface across Outlook, Calendar, and Teams as well. So you can see here it does semantic search. So it isn't just doing a query on an email. It can use the power of AI, semantic search, does pattern matching. Looks at all the previous conversations. It can then draft the email. Then it can go back to the user and say, shall I send this to them? And then get their approval. And then we can see here, contrast to the connector, this is just a scheduled connector that just runs at 9 a.m., very predefined workflow, and sends a templated email. So hopefully that just shows the power of the connected systems and why MCP is so important at the moment. And then bringing it back to the connector, so let's say you've got a high volume of tasks. It might be that you've just got a Power Automate flow, of course, which you've probably built many already. And that would just send a standardized email template. It will send it to your predefined recipient list and then log an execution. So there's no dynamic nature to it. It's just predefined logical steps. OK, so just quickly comparing the two. So let's have a look at when we might use MCP versus connector. So what about when an AI decides to send an email? Well, with MCP, we know it can dynamically do that. With a connector, it can't. The flow needs to actually bake that in. Email search, yes, we know that the MCP can do semantic search, and we also know that the connector is very predetermined. The MCP can draft our personalized emails, yes. The connector is pretty much limited to templates only. Multi-step workflows, so as we saw on our previous slide, MCP can interface with email, calendar, tasks all in one setup versus your connector, which is very limited. Scheduled emails, it's, as we saw on the last slide, probably overkill for an MCP server. And yeah, go for it.
Does that mean that the MCP, do you have any sort of control over data? Of course, the connectors, you can apply a lot of policies in there to make sure that the agent's not sharing data or accessing data that you don't want to. But on an MCP level, can you have a similar level of control, although you're dealing with, updated data, real emails?
Yeah. That's a good question. So with connectors, they almost come pre-shipped with security out of the box. With MCP, there is this ongoing discussion about the security of them at the moment. So there's hesitancy about stepping too deep into the technology before truly testing and assessing, because we're essentially giving free rein to an AI to help delegate to the tools in our environment. That's quite a scary notion if you look at it on the surface. So connectors definitely are a quick win because they've got that pre-configured security. MCP has to be rigorously tested with your external third-party systems.
Okay, so that, I assume, is one of the reasons why you have both working in conjunction, right?
In a hybrid, yeah, exactly. Cool, so I'll just finish with this slide before we get into the nice practical demo. So in the context of Copilot Studio agents, or just generally Microsoft agents, the typical development lifecycle when we're integrating MCP would be you'd configure the server and authentication on your agent. Let's assume it's a Copilot Studio agent. Now, when the agent is run at runtime, it will trigger and hit your MCP server. It will understand what tools are available and what commands it can and can't do. You limit that MCP server. So you can say, I don't want it to delete emails, but I want to allow it to send emails. So that is initiated at runtime. It hits your MCP server and then unlocks those tools. Cool. Any questions at all before we bring this to life with Craig's practical demo?
Yes. So obviously you're talking about IAM and RBAC throughout this, but is there actually something within Microsoft to set a policy so that developers within these systems actually that have to adhere to that as well?
Yeah, I can probably send that to Craig from the Microsoft stack perspective, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, no problem whatsoever. So I just want to get the question right. Was the question around being policy driven for the MCP service? Is that correct?
Yeah, and anything that it connects to as well from an IAM point of view. So obviously ensuring that the identity is there, and then ensuring that they're actually allowed to have certain access to certain things. So for instance, a CEO might have more access to other information than a junior developer.
Yeah, so basically what the way it works is because it's all plugging into OAuth 2, it's going to utilize the context of your authentication that you have capability or access to. So if I logged in and I didn't have access to a specific environment or specific mailbox, then that context wouldn't be delivered back to me. But it does have access to multiple layers within, let's say, for example, Exchange. And I'll show you in a second where we can actually layer that and bring in the capabilities down or up, depending on how we want to do that. But from an authentication perspective, it's all done on your OAuth 2 within your Entra ID. So whatever you have access to there, it'll be able to pass that on basically on your behalf as your persona.
Thanks, Craig. Any other questions? Awesome. So I think considering we're pretty light in terms of the MCP implementation, I think hopefully this will be nice and eye-opening. And yeah, Craig, over to you.
So good afternoon, everyone. As Victor mentioned, my name is Craig. I am a solutions architect at Ingram Micro, and I work very closely with the PP Tech team. And over the last couple of years, we've certainly been speaking a lot about AI, and really the MCP piece has certainly given us, I would say, a new way of integrating these agents within the agentic AI space. So what I want to demo today is really a use case around pretty simple, one that I came up with regards to sitting in my car. I'm driving from Auckland to Wellington, and I basically want to have an agent that can do things on my behalf, like check my emails, send my emails, send a schedule, maybe create a statement of work for me as a template, you know, that type of stuff where I don't actually have to open my laptop to get that done. I'm going to basically get this agent to do that on my behalf. So fingers crossed that everything works, because you know, as it goes with demos, you never know. But basically, this is Copilot Studio, and this is what we're going to be today. So the first part of the demo, I'm really going to focus on connectors. So as Ben correctly mentioned, connectors and MCP are not versus each other. They're not one or the other. They really can complement each other, and it really does depend on what we're trying to achieve from a business outcome perspective. Connectors are great. They are stable. They are precise, and we tell them what they can do and they go and do it. Whereas MCP, we lose a little bit of that control because we're bringing that context awareness in, that intelligence in. So we're basically saying to it, all right, well, I want you to go from here to Wellington, and this is the motorway I want you to take. Then we're going to go with a connector. If we say, well, all we want really is for you to get to Wellington, I don't really mind which road you take, then we can look at something like MCP, give it more freedom to do certain things. So hopefully from this demo, you'll be able to see exactly how we do both sides and why both sides will work, but one side is a little bit more, I suppose, restricted from a usage perspective, as well as can become that big overhead. So the big thing that Ben mentioned as well is that we have multiple agents that we're creating within our organizations. We have agents that our users are creating within our organizations. And as we add connectors to each of these agents, suddenly have 60, 70, 80, 100 different connectors that we've got to manage. And each of those connectors have a specific authentication context. So in other words, you have a password or a service account that they use. So we've got to manage the rotation of those passwords, or if those accounts get disabled, what does it break? So it becomes quite a bit of an administration overhead to be able to manage those. So what I'm going to start with creating a blank agent. So I'm just going to call it a personal agent. Or just personal agent, for example. And off it's going to go and just basically create this framework or this blank agent for me. I'm not going to give it any fancy instructions or create anything that's with regards to knowledge or anything like that. We're basically just going to focus on the capability of the agent within a connector and within an MCP perspective. So the way we do that is basically within tools. This is where we can add specific capabilities to the agents. So here's the connectors, and this is where all the connectors sit within the built-in Microsoft 365 and the Copilot Studio connectors. So these are that 1,500 plus that Ben was referring to, that are built in, baked into the solution, that you could come in and utilize these connectors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one that says, okay, I want you to be able to do my emails. So remember, we're creating this from a personal agent perspective. So if I come in here and I say, okay, let's go with just search for it here. Let's go with get emails. So here, get email v3 or v2. I usually generally the latest one. And here's the connection string that we're going to utilize for that connection. All right. So I'm going to add that. And what that's basically going to do is it's going to basically give this agent the capability and the access to view my mailbox. All right. So what I'll do, just switch this to the latest model of Claude. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Microsoft has almost changed their approach, because they used to be only aligned with OpenAI's models. But you can see now that we do have access to Anthropic models as well within Copilot Studio, and they are also in Microsoft 365 Copilot as well. So if you are a big Claude fan or Anthropic fan, you can now use these models within your Microsoft ecosystem as well, which I find is very cool. So what I've done is I've added get emails. So what I'm going to say to it now is basically just ask it to list the last email I received, and it'll just ask me to connect in the test window. But basically it's going to go and utilize that connector that I've just added to be able to go and view what my last email was. Session quickly. Give it a second to load. Oh. If it works now. So you can see over here, it's basically in the test window, it's going to ask you to allow the connection itself. Once you've published this outside of the test window, all of these are automatically enabled. But just from a testing perspective, it's going to pop up and ask me to just allow these certain connections when we're adding them. So you can see basically it's used that connection now. It's gone and basically doing a scan of my mailbox, and then it should come back and basically give me what my latest email is that I have received in my inbox. Now, if we wanted to take this a step further, and let's say that I wanted to send an email, I could then go and say, okay, fine, please send an email to this email address. This is my personal email address, saying I have arrived safely. Now, because we haven't given this agent the ability to be able to send emails, we've only given it to be able to get emails, it's not going to be able to do so because it doesn't have the tool set required to get that going. So what we'll do again is we'll come in, we'll go to the add tool. This time we're going to add a send an email, and basically that is going to be a send an email connector from Microsoft, and that's going to give this agent the capability to send an email on my behalf. So you can see how we start stacking these connectors depending on the function that we want the agent to be able to do. So now we've got 2 connectors that we've got to manage, and 2 of these connectors have got their own authentication context. So you can imagine if you've got 30 or 100 different connectors in here, how quickly that can become quite a messy spaghetti bowl to try and manage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask it to send an email again. This time I'll start my email correct as well. And basically what it will do now is it will then use that new connection that we just added, or that new connector that we just added, and be able to send on my behalf. So now we've layered get emails, and we've layered the send email action as well. Just allow that. And it'll send an email off to the email address that I've set. So utilizing that example that I gave where we're driving in the car, because we can enable voice on these agents, we could actually have this as a Canvas app or an app on our mobile device, and we're actually talking to this agent rather than actually having to type these in. But just for the this demo, I'm basically just going to be typing these in. So I could be saying to it, please list the latest email I've received, and then please send an email to this person telling them that I've arrived safe. And basically what that'll do is then fire that email through to the email address that I have. Now, if we wanted to take it a step further, so let's say I wanted it to be able to check my calendars this time. So I wanted to be able to go and have a look and see if I have time today at 3 p.m. for a meeting. Again, it won't be able to do so until I give it that specific connector. So what we do is we'll come back into tools, we'll go back into add tools, but this time we're going to basically say get calendar view, and we'll add a calendar view specific for the Outlook to be able to see what our events and calendaring looks like. So you can see how granular the connectors are, which is great from a governance perspective, because you really are only allowing a minimal piece of capability to these. So you have to basically stack each one for it. So now we've got, so now we've got the capability of checking my emails, we've got the capabilities of sending emails, and we've got the capability of checking a calendar form to be able to see if I have a specific time available for us. And the last step we want to do is, yes, now I can see that I've got time available at 1 p.m. today or 2 p.m. today, whatever it may be, but now I needed to be able to actually create an event for me. And you guessed it, again, we're going to have to go in, and this time we're going to add a create an event action for this agent to be able to do so. So we'll go in, add the create event, and now this agent will have the ability to be able to create and schedule on our behalf as well. So with that scenario, we basically had to add 4 connectors, and those 4 connectors will then basically allow us to manage our mailbox and manage our scheduling on our behalf and be able to send those schedules on our behalf that we have. I'm just going to quickly refresh this so I can just do a test for you quickly. So here, I'm going to say, please check my calendar and see if I have time tomorrow at 10 a.m. If I do, please schedule a 1-hour meeting with the subject line, statement of work, rework. It should probably ask me to do some connections because I haven't done those for the new ones we've added. Is that a second? And because we've added that now, it will basically then be able to go and utilize those tools that we have to be able to do the entire thing for us. Okay. So that is a use case for us to create an agent, but we're going to be utilizing it from a connectors perspective. So you can see here, it looks like we've already got a meeting. It's going to ask me a couple of questions. What do you want me to do? I'm going to say, let's go create a meeting anyway. So this would basically come back to you and say, hey, Greg, you've got a meeting at 10 o'clock. What time to do? I'm going to say, well, let's schedule that anyway. And then basically that would send off that mail to that email address and schedule on my behalf. Now, when we're looking at it from a MCP perspective, that's where it gets a little bit easier for us. And the reason why it gets easier for us is because the scope of allowance is a lot broader. So on the one hand, a connector is going to be very specific and pretty secure by default. Whereas on the other hand, when we're utilizing MCP servers, especially custom ones, we take control of the entire life cycle of that service. So all the security, all the access that the MCP server has, all the capability that an MCP server has starts to fall part and parcel of what we as the IT companies that are looking after it or the IT department have to take control and basically manage that capability. The nice thing about it from a Microsoft perspective is Microsoft ship MCP servers almost as software as a service like. And within the Copilot Studio, you'll be able to start seeing these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new blank one. I'm going to say, call it personal agent MCP. And this time we're going to use the MCP servers rather than using the connectors to do exactly the same case that I just demoed on the connector side. So what we'll do is we'll come into the tools. This time, instead of using the connector piece, we're going to move into the model context protocol. Now, this list is growing on a monthly basis. So as these are coming through, Microsoft is adding a whole bunch more of these MCP servers. So just like the connectors where we have a whole bunch, 1,500 plus now of different connectors, we're starting to see a whole bunch of vendor-based, OEM-based MCP servers that are getting presented through the Microsoft ecosystem as a managed service or a managed MCP service for the end user. The nice thing about this is that we don't have to manage the hosting of the MCP server. We don't have to manage SLAs, the security around this. So this is all baked straight into our Entra IDs, OAuth, etc. So if we wanted to come have a look and say, cool, same use case, I want to this time MCPs, I'm going to come in here and say work IQ mail. There's the connection, click add, And basically what that's going to do, that's going to give me access to my entire mailbox from a send receive, delete perspective, list perspective, whatever you've got access to your entire mailbox now because of that single add that we've done. So instead of adding multiple connectors, we've just added the one now. The nice thing about it is that we can refine the capability of each of these MCPs. You can see over here under tools, by default, everything is enabled, all right? But you could certainly come in here and you can say, all right, all I want you to do is be able to get my messages, maybe reply to a message, certainly not reply to all. I also don't want you to, I don't know, be able to download attachments. So this is how we can refine the capability of the MCP and what we want to do. So if we're scared of, someone will say, okay, we'll delete all the messages in my inbox. We don't want that, so we'll take the delete function away from this MCP server. Or whatever it may be from a use case perspective, you might want to refine these and set these up. Perhaps a reply to all would probably be one. So if everyone's just chatting to agents and a corporate communication goes out for the business, you want to be able to reply to all and have this conversation with each other, sending emails across the entire organization. So we do certainly have the ability and in what they are allowed to do and what they aren't allowed to do. So just for this, I'm just going to keep it on all of them. I'm just going to switch it because I am a big Opus fan, so I'm going to switch to Anthropic. So now that we've added that, we can then come in here and we can basically say to it now, we just added that single one, send an email and say I have arrived safe. I'm just going to allow the MC server to connect, and it will then be able to go and send that email. You'll see that it does a check of what it is allowed to do first, goes through what it's allowed to do, and then basically sends that email on my behalf. So that's been sent through, so that should come through in a second. There we go, I've arrived safely. So we have the ability now to go and again check our emails because that single MCP server has the ability to check our emails, send emails, reply to emails, etc. But if we wanted to take it a step further again and then go with a calendars, there is a specific MCP tool for the calendars itself. So again, we come in, we'll have a look at the model context, sorry, not that one. And a tool, come into the model context protocol, and we'll have a look under work IQ. So you can see there's a specific calendar one. So that'll be all of the scheduling. So if we want to book rooms or we want to check people's calendars, check availabilities, that type of stuff, we would add this one. And basically that would then give us the ability to do all of the scheduling and check people's free, busy, etc. And where we can take it another step further is where we want to actually get it to create things on our behalf. So in the previous example, we had all of the connectors, okay? So the connectors, we managed to be able to get it to work with all of our mailbox features. But if we wanted that agent with the connectors to create a Word document, for example, we would then have to build out a Power Automate flow and basically build out a flow for it to be able to call and then be able to build out the Word document for us, save that into SharePoint, and or basically a flow that I call. With MCP now, we are actually able to add a Word MCP server. So what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to actually generate Word documents on the fly through them. Now, as it stands today, we only have Word from an MCP perspective, but I have heard from speaking with some of the early adopters, the people that work with it, is that getting Excel and be getting PowerPoint fairly soon when it comes to when it comes to adding the MCP servers or the other files as well. So sorry. That one. I'll show you exactly what this does for us now.
Craig, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
In your the previous prompt that you've given, it's given you a summary of the email that's sent there, and it says, "I wanted to let you know I've arrived safe. Also, could you please email John regarding the statement of work?" Now that's completely outside the prompt you gave it. Where's that come from?
What prompt did I give it?
Oh, sorry, you did. Take it back.
Yes, I did.
My bad.
No worries at all. So basically we have now a capability to create documents on behalf as well. So what I can do now is I can say to it, all right, I want you to create me a statement of work template, okay, without any tables. So what I'll do now is I'll say, go and do that. And what it's going to do is it's going to use that Word MCP server to create a statement of work template. It'll save it to SharePoint and then email me the link directly that has been created. All right, so that happens by default. The nice thing about this is that if I wanted to now change that prompt that I've said, send an email to Craig, tell him I've arrived safe, but also attach a statement of work template for him to complete in preparation for our meeting, now I'm getting these MCP servers and these agents to do that on my behalf. So just give it a second for it to complete that, but basically you can see here, it's created a statement of work template, it sent it to an email address, and basically if I have a look over here, here's the statement of work that it has created. All right. So the person who creates it automatically gets a shared link within SharePoint for the file. Now what I'm going to say to him is say, send an email to that email address, tell him I've arrived safe. Please also ask him to email John regarding the statement of work, attach the statement of work template we just created. And what it will do then is it will go and grab that attachment, that statement of work that we've just created, attach it to the email, send it to John and say, John, please will you prepare this for the meeting coming forward. So where this is going from an MCP perspective, like I said, we're going to start getting a lot more capability from an Excel perspective, from a PowerPoint perspective, and a lot of the other Microsoft tools are going to start getting their own MCP servers. But also, as we're building out as the OEMs are building out these, if you're using Box, for example, you've got capabilities, Databricks. So there's a whole bunch of different MCP that are starting to get more and more power available to us to be able to actually, in a very simple way, just add the capability to it. But we can control it, obviously, from what they're allowed to do. So if we have a look over here, you can see I have got an email. Just want to let you know we're saved. Also, can you please email John Grant the statement of work? I've attached the statement of work template for your reference. I didn't give it a really good prompt from a creation perspective, so let's see what it did. There's the statement of work. That's not terrible. What we can also do is, if we wanted to have our templates, we could come in and add the template as knowledge to this agent. So if we have specific statement of work templates or templates we wanted to utilize, we add it as a knowledge source here, and we would basically say to it, use the template A, template B, whatever it may be, as the template when creating it, and then it will then use that template for you to send that through to you. Now we've done all of that without opening Outlook, without opening Word, purely use MCP servers and the agents within Copilot Studio. Now, the last one I wanted to show you was really around, because we have the limitation that we can only do it with Word right now, I thought, well, let's try and show a custom MCP server, but bring in PowerPoint creation for it. So what I've done is I created just bring it in for view. I created a little VM sitting in Azure. This is just running a Python script that has a MCP server that's running into it or running on it. And basically what I've done is move this out the way. So what I've done is I just want to switch this over here. I have added my custom MCP server to a Copilot Studio agent. So you can see over here under tools, I have a Craig private MCP server, and that MCP server is what is managing PowerPoint presentations for me. So if we came in to add tools, instead of going to the here, which are pre-populated within Copilot Studio, we could click on Model Context Protocol and then add the server name, the server URL, etc., and then you could connect it to your custom one. Now, before you go out and you can build, there are a whole bunch of pretty awesome open source ones that are available for us to utilize. Just please keep in mind that these and the security of these is 100% our responsibility. There is no management or delivered as a software as a service perspective like Microsoft does. So we really want to make sure that we lock these down and make sure that we are as secure as possible when it comes to these MCP servers. So I've added this one. So what I can say is list all available templates, for example. And it will basically go and read my MCP server, my custom MCP server, and bring back what templates are available. And then what I'll do, I'm going to say to it, okay, I want you to create a 2 to 3 slide executive presentation. Over here, it's reading all of the templates that I have available on that MCP server. And then what I've done is I've basically said, create a 2 to 3 slide executive level PowerPoint presentation for IT leadership that outlines the strategy for adopting MCP servers within Copilot Studio, and then gave it some more context as to what I want it to do. And what it'll do is it'll basically, if I send that off, it'll basically now open up PowerPoint and then start building it out on my MCP server for me, and then basically save that to SharePoint and share the link to the user that has created it. So this is an example of what it can do from a custom perspective. So if there isn't something out of the box that we can do, then perhaps we might want to look at it creating a custom one for us to be able to create it. So give it a second. I hope it does work. Certainly was working earlier. Oh, there we go. So basically, it's going to take some of the templates I have and start doing its magic, working through the different slides, and eventually it will come back and give us a slide deck that has got our logos. Again, if you want to use the templates, it's all the templates that are on the MCP server, building up the executive summary, and then basically have ability to have PowerPoint presentations created as well. I do think, like I said, that this is going to come soon natively in Copilot Studio, but this is an idea around if you have old legacy systems that you want to wrap a MCP server around, if you have on-prem environments that you want to wrap an MCP server around. This is the power of those MCP servers, because we connect to them with a standard HTTPS connection string, and then they are either on site or on-prem or sitting within that legacy system, and they have access to that. So they basically bring that information, but we connect to it with modern authentication and modern capabilities. So it's really that middleware ground that it does a really good job as, and we can bring in all these legacy systems for our agents as well. So basically, that's pretty much what it's going to do. It's going to build that out, and it'll then say, I'm finished with it. There's your slide, and it can go off and email those to people, etc. So yeah, that is what a custom MC can do for us as well. Again, we can either build them from a custom perspective, or utilize the ones that are available to us within Copilot. And with that, are there any questions within the audience? That's pretty much what I wanted to show you today. I hope that gives you a better understanding of connectors versus MCP servers, and I suppose the different powers that each of them have.
Say from excuse my ignorance here, but from an administration point of view, I'm assuming all of this can go into Sentinel and any LLM observations as well. So what goes from here to the LLM and what comes back, and that can you can then follow up against that.
Yep.
Absolutely. So everything is logged. I would say that it certainly does go into Defender, and we can actually start seeing that Microsoft's even leaning towards wrapping it on a per agent basis. Unfortunately, right now, we still got to pay it on a per user basis, but I'm thinking that's going to change very soon, that we're going to actually have agents, because they all get their own unique ID now anyway within Entra. We're going to be able to wrap security policies around those, because we've got all the logs coming in from that ID anyway. So that is certainly the capability from a Defender perspective is there, that will be pushed into Sentinel. And then also from an identity or information protection perspective, all of this gets logged into Purview as well. And Microsoft Purview now has a dedicated agent section where all of what people are utilizing the agents for, and you still can't see what people type because that would be invasion of privacy, but any access to information, you can actually go and see in the unified log what the agent has been calling and what it's been doing. So that's another great trigger. If something goes out of whack or starts accessing certain things or tries to access certain things that it shouldn't, that'll be a trigger within Defender to call your Betstar playbook, etc.
Any other questions for Craig? No? Thank you, Craig. Appreciated.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, man.
Cool. So just to wrap up, I'm just going to take over the screen share before we hand back or over to Liam. So just some final closing remarks, really. There are, as we've touched on already during the session today, we've just got to look out for a few risks and pitfalls when it comes to MCP. We're essentially exposing the power of AI to our systems. It's a scary notion, so it does need to be controlled and delivered safely and securely. So, it's very, very different to just a pre-built connector that just has all of that baked in. We've got to go through rigorous, strategy to do that. We've got security and data privacy, so it's actually a top concern at the moment that 50% believe that there is a security risk with these, understandably so. Implementing least privileges, of course, you don't want to just open up to all the operations in Outlook, for example. You want to be really selective, as Craig showed, that on the toggles, just be really selective about what you need and maybe just build and add as you go. So as you're stress testing the MCP servers and capabilities, you could start small and then start to unlock more capability for it. Operational overhead, of course, as we've explained today, is much, much higher than a connector, but does unlock a huge amount of potential within the organization. Performance and reliability, so just some things to just be aware of around latency and error handling. So do test these thoroughly just to make sure that you're not getting too much lag on the responses back from your MCP server, especially if it's hosted elsewhere outside of your Azure environment. Just quickly on example use cases, so we've got multiple system orchestration here. That's obviously where the MCP comes into its own. It can orchestrate your systems under that one umbrella. So if you've got an ERP, logistics, CRMs, it can manage all of that for your organization. Exposing legacy systems, when you're struggling with legacy systems and APIs and all of that, it can be quite a convoluted way of trying to access those systems. So MCP can make that job a little bit easier, just to wrap around it. And then just lastly is the hybrid approach. So as we've talked about throughout, it doesn't replace connectors. They very much can be used in tandem when required. Just lightly, ownership and structure. Just make sure you have a think about your governance as you're deploying these internally within your technical teams and as an organization. Auditing and insights, we talked about the logging. So all of that's in place. Make sure that that's in your governance structure for new agent deployments and MCP servers. And evolve and adapt as you go. I think picking that first one that you can build and deploy in your organization, stress test the value, and then the creative juices really start flowing as you start to see the power of what it can do. So quick win, identify a low-risk pilot scenario, experiment with the MCP servers, and leverage the recommended resources like the session today, and we'll share some content afterwards as well. Cool. All right, with that, I'm going to hand over to Liam Butner to cover the Microsoft content.
Hi guys, those of you that haven't met me, I'm Liam. I look after the Modern Workplace portfolio more from a licensing perspective, so not as technical as Craig, maybe enough to be dangerous, but I try to stay out of that mostly. I just wanted to go through sort of 15 minutes today, just sort of key Microsoft 365 updates around the program and just CSP as a whole and sort of what we're seeing in the market. I feel like as important obviously as the technical deployment sort of utilization of software is, I also think understanding the licensing and how we actually use this program to, I guess, effectively license yourself, and also just make sure that you're also not paying for things you don't need, and that you're ahead of these curves and changes so that you can structure yourself for things like the price increase and try get as much time before that actually occurs as well. So that's sort of my bread and butter, which obviously there's enough content to create a rollout of. So I guess I'll just start off today with enterprise agreements. Some of you in this room I already know have been on enterprise agreements before. You might be looking at them now. You might have been pushed off them due to some of the new changes, but I just kind of want to go through a quick high level on what we've sort of seen with EAs over the years. So those that you don't know that, it's an enterprise agreement. That's what they call it. Traditionally, how we purchased, whether it was 365, server licensing, even Azure, there was, I don't even know, there's probably over 30 different programs that you could go under from Microsoft since probably 2010. In 2016, when they released CSP, things got a little bit easier, but they kind of didn't get rid of any of the previous programs, which kind of just confused things. And fortunately today, we're seeing a really good consolidation of these programs. So I think when we look at the programs now that you'll be licensed most of your software under is going to be CSP. So that's kind of what you either buy web direct through Microsoft, or more importantly, through your resellers like PBTech, which we hope you're all doing. Secondly, thirdly is MCA, or what we now call MCA-E. So basically under CSP, you sign basically what's called the Microsoft Customer Agreement. And now with the new, I guess, enterprise agreement structure, you move into what we call MCA-E. So it's using a similar agreement. There's some, similarities. The majority of it is the same contract, I suppose. But under enterprise, there are certain clauses that can be added or retracted based on your some of your privacy requirements or data sovereignty requirements. But I think more importantly, under the new structure, what we're seeing is a big change to the minimum requirements and things like that, and pricing, which is realistically within New Zealand super important because we do run mostly, I want to say, an SMB market. And when I mean that, I sort of mean under 500 seats, because Microsoft look at enterprise in the US as like 5,000 plus, which is just not really applicable to the New Zealand market. So we sit in a pretty unique space. So I guess the main shift was, implemented and sort of the start of this year, end of last year. It was announced the start of 2025, and the whole idea was trying to have a flexible, using the same MCA agreement under CSP, under EA. But what it's really done as well is that Microsoft had just gone to that shift to focus on those really large, and again, in their eyes, enterprise in New Zealand is probably, I'm going to say 1,000 plus to really get good volume discounts. That's what we see from a 365 perspective, at least, as what makes sense to them. And that's obviously seen a big offboarding of those smaller customers around, when I say smaller, still very big for New Zealand, but around that 500 mark and under in particular, being offboarded and pushed over to CSP. And obviously for a lot of customers, that's been a bit of a shock to them based on the price, how the structure works, and just having to do things differently to what they're used to, really. So it's left a lot of that, I say smaller and mid-sized because that's Microsoft's terminology. That is still pretty big for our market, but it really has opened up an opportunity for the likes of PBTech and that to obviously bring in sessions like this and I guess generate ROI through that, but more importantly, deliver value for you guys. So really quickly, shift in that licensing strategy is really starting to change now with this. The rise of CSP model has obviously been something that's been a lot more flexible and scalable, especially when you want to just add licenses mid-term. Obviously, you'll be familiar with the True Up program under enterprise agreements if you were in that stage. But I think more importantly, it's just given a lot of businesses a chance to sort of look outside what they've done for, the last 10 years of an enterprise agreement. And work out what their sort of IT strategy and more importantly budgeting looks like under CSP, or could look like under CSP, because in many ways it can be actually cheaper to go through CSP or just structure better under CSP. So a little bit about the enterprise agreement side. I don't want to go too much about that because again that will only apply to some of you, of course. Some other key updates we've had around some of the new product releases over the last quarter. So I'll start off with some of the Copilot products and bundles. So some of you might have seen this. Anybody that plays in that space of using Business Basic, Standard, Premium, or Copilot with the first party M365 Copilot might have noticed these come out recently. So end of last year we had Copilot for Business on the right there released. At the moment, same functionality to M365 Copilot that many of you would have maybe trialed or may have even started to do organizational rollouts. So that first party Copilot within your M365 productivity apps. From there, they've just basically made bundles for Business Basic, Standard and Premium to include them in one price. And I'll get to it soon, but the reason why I'm sort of bringing this up is because there's some pretty amazing promos from Microsoft around this, and a really good way to access these products at a pretty heavily discounted rate as well. So that's sort of where this is coming from, but just bear in mind this is all monthly paid annual commit pricing, NZD, but we've had a couple of products around that, as well as the Defender suite that's coming as well for that. Moving on to grace period. I don't know who might have heard or have used this before. It was sort of a, what's the best way to word it? The most utilized, not talked about Microsoft feature amongst licensing. So anybody that's let licenses expire, not cancel, you might have seen them hang in the tenant for sort of 30 days, sometimes even longer. And you go, I don't know why, maybe I've purchased a new subscription or something, and now my licensing from the previous subscription's still there. That was called grace period. You were given 30 days by Microsoft, free of charge, uninterrupted service for that licensing you previously held. That is going away very, very shortly, and is moving to something called extended service terms. So what you'll see under the new structure and current state, that 30-day grace period, and future state is extended service terms, basically meaning you'll have 3 really clear options upon your license expiring if you've got auto renew turned off. Now, the 30-day grace period is completely gone. You can still enter that period as one of the 3 options. It'll be an elected option to say renew the subscription into EST. Now it's a daily calculated rate at 5% higher than the monthly commit pricing. Yeah, I got that right. Just checking. You can still cancel at renewal. That's option still there, or you can just obviously choose to renew the subscription for another month or year or whatever the term might be. But just be aware that 30 days, if you were using that as sort of that safety net, or maybe to get a month free billing, I know some people have, that is going away. So just be aware of that. That's starting. It was supposed to actually be 1st of April, and that's been delayed till May 4th now. So they're giving us a bit of extra time. Cool. Now, something I guess a little bit more exciting is some of the CSP promos we see in market. So these are accessible to all of our resellers like PBTech, but also as an extension to you as end customers. So I've just put up a couple on the board that we've got. Now, the guide it's called the Global Promo Readiness Guide. Many of you will be able to access that same file and document, which has every month is updated for all the latest CSP promotions with Microsoft. Again, these are, I guess, promos from Microsoft directly, and that flow down to obviously the reseller that you can take advantage of. It's great for people that maybe, as an example, have used some of these products in the past and maybe want to go for a full rollout, like I said with Copilot for Business. Just be aware, some of these, there's a lot of stipulations, as you'd imagine, from Microsoft around minimum purchase quantities. As an example, 3-year commit E3, E5s, minimum order quantity 100 as an example. But these are a really great way to, before you are going to say, I don't know, migrate, or you're coming up for renewal, you're looking to lock into another term or move providers, always ask the question, like, are there any Microsoft promos around? Because there's a lot we can take advantage of. Maybe there's some upgrades we can do. If you're on Business Premium, we can upgrade to Business Premium plus Copilot as an example and still get the promo. So there's some really cool ways that we can take advantage even mid-term of these promos and make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck if you're looking at obviously rolling something like this out. Again, this is just a quick snapshot of a bunch of offers, but those bundles I just spoke about and showed you, new bundles added, there's some great promos off those, from 15% off Copilot for Business up to 35% off Business Standard and Copilot. So again, it all varies. Always best to just check with us, and even through Alex, ask us, and we can always validate that your tenant maybe hasn't had an E3 or an E5 in there before, just to see if you're eligible for a promo. There's obviously, again, stipulations everywhere and nuances, so we always want to check that. But there's a lot of value that you can obviously tap into here. Cool. Okay. Again, it's a bit of a positive and negative sandwich I keep dipping between. So I'll start off with the price increase. Now, some of you might have seen this already, end of last year. This is all just USD pricing, by the way, because we will get our NZD pricing the month prior to this. So June we'll have this pricing through as an NZ dollar. This was what they originally released at the end of last year. Now, this actually been expanded in February. They actually expanded to some other products, things like Entra ID, Defender, a couple of the Defender products as well are affected. But I just want to make sure everyone is across that these are coming. Again, you're not affected at your billing date, you'll be affected at your renewal date. So even if you paid monthly, but your renewal's in December, you won't be affected till then. But please just factor this in when you're budgeting, obviously, and needing to get any sign-offs. Just make sure that this is all factored in, because these will be coming pretty quick and fast. There's an increase anything from a couple of percent up to 15, 20%. So we just want to make sure, depending on the product, of course. Some products are unaffected, like Business Premium, which is nice to get a bit of a reprieve there for once. But yeah, again, just be aware of those coming. I'll try and end on a slightly more positive note. Has anyone heard of E7 here before? Yeah, cool. All right, so good. So this will be coming. As far as we're aware, that'll be May 1st, 2026. At this stage, we've got a $99 USD price tag. Again, we've only got that pricing, and again, we'll get the NZD pricing next month. My crystal ball will predict around 170 per user per month, I'm going to say. This isn't going to be for everybody whatsoever. However, if you are an E5 user using that full compliance governance stack, the Defender stack, obviously Entra and all of that, the P2 features, and Copilot and Entra Suite, even if you're getting into the private and internet access features, that's where the SKU financially will make sense, obviously. But you've really got to do that cost analysis with, the likes of Power BI Pro and Teams Phone Standard that are all in E5 to make it make sense. You've really got to be taking advantage of all that. But I just want to highlight there is a product coming that, if you were to stack these products individually, of course it's going to cost more than an E7 product. But again, just highlighting that there's a new E7 product coming. I think it's something that, the likes of some of the law firms and stuff, I can see that's sort of the most interest we've drummed up so far. But again, not for everybody, but just something that everyone should be aware of, because it may make sense in your business based on what you're currently using in your environment. Cool. Was there any questions on any of the updates I've gone through? Any questions on pricing or anything like that? Licensing? Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, again, just a thank you from myself and everybody else, but I'll hand back to Victor. You want to wrap up?
In all seriousness, if when it comes down to like licensing structure and stuff like that, it's a lot more straightforward today as it was before, particularly on the M365 side. But there are still so many different options to work through, and add-ons or no add-ons, business flavor license versus enterprise. That is one of the benefits that you're going to get from our team, right? So if you are partnering up with us for your Microsoft licenses, we're going to have this review at least once a year when your bigger renewals are up, and then we're going to do that calculation with you guys, taking consideration things like Copilot deployment in the next 12 months that we can account for per view or anything like that, right? So come and talk to us, talk to Alex, and we will be engaging with you guys on often basis, rather than just transact the license and see you later. So we want to be better than that, and you guys can hold us accountable for it. We are here for this. And look, just one thing to mention as well. So Ben, as I said, lead our AI team within PB Tech. Now he works with Microsoft tools as well, but his department delivers AI products and projects for our customers, right? Sometimes he utilizes Microsoft, but sometimes he utilizes other services that makes more sense to us. We have commoditized agents out there, like voice agents, we call PB Aura, and that can do outbound calls as well as receive inbound calls and go through a FAQ and respond to the client, all fully automated and really, really natural, because the technology finally has enabled us to actually build something like this. So if you think, look, Copilot's really cool, or AI, I can see the potential, but I do not have the capacity to actually build this internally myself, we are focused on other projects, then you can engage with us, and we will either expose the tools that we work with, or see if you're a potential client for one of the products that we already created. And that could just fast track on a more safe way, a more potentially cost-effective way, the implementation of these systems internally for you guys. Look, I really appreciate everybody. And Peter?
I was going to say, are we using those internally?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Peter. You must know a lot about it. So we implemented these agents already internally in our customer service and in our MSP help desk. So
for our MSP clients, overflow or after hours calls, they actually reach an agent, and the agent actually instruct their potential user on, the problems that they're having, and then can it escalate to a human. Now our customer service has had a lot of success as well from the same agent created, in which we receive anything from tracking items or price or refunds information, works with the client on the first point of call, and then if it needs to be, also escalate to a human. So we're already seeing very positive impacts of that internally for us, and that was the reason why it actually drove us to create a technology or package it up as a SaaS subscription, the same level of agents that we have implemented internally to our clients, right? So if you guys are interested, you can have a demo of that. We can even share a phone number that you can give a call. It's either going to be Emily, Sarah, or Jennifer. Some of the agents that we have available pick up the phone and we'll have a conversation with you guys. So just so you can have a little bit of an idea of how we're doing. And like I said, it's hosted, it's fully secured and compliant with all the terms of actually the European market for privacy and security. So you actually don't have to worry about making sure that you are compliant with an agent that you would create yourself. We already done that work, right? It's charged on a subscription based as well and consumption. So you just pay for what you utilize.
Just the second bit that I was going to draw out there was, some people might go, well, how is PB at the forefront of this? Our service desk takes about 30 or 40,000 calls a month. And so I think the value there is that you can come and ask us and we'll show you, the raw data from 6 weeks of, and some really good A/B testing and really good real-world lessons on people's, in some cases, resistance to AI, and then in a different capacity how it works. But it's us eating our own dog food and really testing it for you guys.
Yeah, that's a very good point that Peter said. We looked at implementing internally before we could actually take to market, and we trust the technology, and yeah, it has driven already great results for us internally. So don't limit yourselves to Microsoft. Obviously today was about Microsoft, but we have other options where it makes sense, right? Their products are great by the way. All right, so I think that's all for us. Thanks a lot for coming. Again, bit of a hiccup on having the people that we're going to present originally here, but I believe we managed to deliver what we needed to. But if you have any more questions, just drop us a note and reach out. We can clarify them. Thank you.